You ever have one of those moments where you think, this can't possibly be happening? Well, that's exactly what went through my head when a woman I barely knew, Karen, the queen of entitlement from our HOA, showed up at my quiet cabin in the woods, luggage in hand, and announced, "This place will be perfect for my weekend getaway." Now, let me back up a second. My cabin isn't some random rental property. It's my escape, my sanctuary. I built it up from a rundown shack into something cozy and personal. A little piece of heaven where I could breathe away from the nonsense of everyday life. But apparently Karen had other plans. It all started when she accidentally overheard me telling a neighbor I'd be heading up to the mountains for a long weekend. Somehow in her mind, that translated to, "Oh, great. He won't be there. I can just take it for myself." The kicker? She didn't ask. She didn't offer money. She didn't even try to pretend this was a favor exchange. No, she marched up my porch steps, dragging her roller bag behind her, already on the phone bragging to someone. "Yeah, I've secured the perfect spot for my getaway. Private cabin, secluded, just me and nature." I remember standing there in disbelief, coffee mug still in my hand, wondering if this was some kind of prank. But nope, it was very real. She set her bag down at my front door and started reaching for the handle, like she owned the place. "Excuse me," I finally blurted out, trying to keep my tone calm. "This is my cabin. You can't just—" Karen cut me off with the infamous line that still makes my blood boil. "Well, you weren't planning on using it, so why not let someone responsible enjoy it instead?" I laughed at first. Not the "ha-ha, this is funny" kind of laugh, but the "I can't believe you're actually saying this" laugh. "Karen, that's not how this works. You don't get to demand my property because you feel like it." Her face twisted instantly, like I had just insulted royalty. "You're being incredibly selfish," she snapped. "I'll only be here for a couple of days. It's not like you'll even miss it." And that, my friends, was the spark that lit the fire. What started as an entitled request was about to spiral into one of the most ridiculous standoffs I've ever experienced, complete with cops, accusations, and one HOA Karen determined to win at any cost. The morning air was crisp, and the sound of birds should have set a peaceful tone for the day. Instead, the soundtrack of my weekend became Karen's voice, sharp and demanding, echoing off the trees like a broken siren. "Look," she said, standing there with her arms crossed and a glare that could cut steel. "This cabin isn't even being used the right way. I could make it Instagram-worthy in a weekend. Don't you care about how this place looks? You're letting it go to waste." I had to stop myself from laughing out loud again. Instagram-worthy? I didn't build this cabin to impress strangers on social media. I built it to escape people exactly like her. "Karen," I said, trying to stay firm, "this isn't happening. You can't stay here. You need to leave." But if there's one thing I've learned about HOA Karens, it's this. When you tell them no, it's like speaking a foreign language. The word doesn't exist in their dictionary. Instead of packing her things, Karen did the opposite. She dragged her roller bag inside the front door, bold as ever, as though my refusal had been an invitation. I blocked her path, but she pushed past me with the strength of someone powered by pure entitlement. I was stunned. For a moment, I just stood there in shock, trying to process what I was witnessing. She walked straight into the living room, set her bag down on the rug, and announced, "Perfect spot for my yoga mat." Now my disbelief turned into anger. "Get out now." My voice was no longer calm. It was steel. But Karen, of course, had a comeback ready. "If you're going to be so unreasonable," she sniffed, "then I'll just have to call the authorities. Surely the HOA will back me up when they hear how you're treating a neighbor." I almost choked. "The HOA? You think the Homeowners Association can override my property rights?" Karen pulled out her phone like it was a weapon. "If you won't let me stay here willingly, then I'll escalate it." "I know my rights." I raised an eyebrow. "Do you also know this is trespassing?" She ignored me, dialing furiously, stomping around my cabin as though she owned the place. At that point, my weekend retreat had turned into a courtroom. Drama, with me cast as the villain in her twisted script. And then, the unthinkable happened. She didn't just call the HOA, she called the police. That's right, Karen reported me at my own cabin, claiming I was harassing her and refusing to let her stay. What happened next? Well, let's just say things took a turn from ridiculous to jaw-dropping. I'll never forget the crunch of gravel that morning as two police cruisers rolled up the narrow dirt road to my cabin. Their sirens were off, but their presence carried weight. Blue lights flickering through the trees, tires grinding to a halt just outside my gate. Karen, of course, lit up like she'd just won the lottery. "Oh, thank goodness, officers!" she cried, rushing outside like a damsel in distress from a bad soap opera. "You got here just in time. He's being aggressive, and he's trying to keep me out of my weekend rental." I stepped onto the porch, arms folded, trying not to explode with laughter. "Weekend rental? This is my cabin. She's trespassing." The two officers exchanged looks. One of them, tall with a mustache that screamed old-school cop, raised a brow. "Ma'am, can we see some paperwork showing this is your rental?" Karen froze for a second, then stammered. "Well, it's not technically rented, but I deserve to use it. He wasn't even planning to." The other officer, younger and clearly trying not to smirk, glanced my way. "Sir, can you confirm this is your property?" I pulled out my ID and the property deed I kept in the cabin's desk drawer. Within seconds, they saw the truth. My name, my land, my home. End of story. Or at least, it should have been. But Karen wasn't about to let reality ruin her fantasy. "You don't understand," she wailed. "This man is selfish. He hoards this cabin like some kind of troll under a bridge. The HOA will back me up. You'll see." The older officer let out a long sigh, clearly regretting every career choice that led him to this ridiculous moment. "Ma'am, wanting something doesn't make it yours. Right now, you're trespassing, and if you don't leave voluntarily, we'll have to escort you out." Her jaw dropped like he'd betrayed her. "Escort me? I'm the victim here." I couldn't resist. Victims usually don't drag their luggage into someone else's living room. The younger cop chuckled under his breath, quickly turning it into a cough to stay professional. But Karen's face turned scarlet. She stomped her foot like a toddler denied candy, screaming, "This is injustice! I'll have your badges for this." The officers stayed calm, but the tension was thick. I thought it was over, until Karen made her boldest move yet. She actually tried to run back inside my cabin, shouting, "I'm not leaving! This is mine for the weekend!" And that right there was the moment everything spiraled completely out of her control. The second Karen bolted toward my front door. The two officers moved faster than I expected. The younger one stepped in front of her, holding out his hand. "Ma'am, stop right there," he ordered firmly. But Karen wasn't done making a spectacle. She shoved past him, nearly tripping over her own roller bag, and yelled, "You can't keep me out of my weekend home!" I swear, if the situation hadn't been so stressful, I would have laughed until my ribs hurt. But at that moment, the older officer had enough. He reached out, gently but firmly, and caught her by the arm. "Ma'am, you need to calm down. You are not authorized to be here. You've been asked to leave. This is your final warning." Karen twisted dramatically, throwing her hands in the air like she was in some courtroom drama. "This is harassment. This is abuse of power. I'm going to sue all of you." The younger officer gave me a look that said, "We see this all the time," and then spoke calmly. "Ma'am, if you don't leave, we'll have no choice but to remove you physically." Is that really how you want this day to go? For a split second, I thought reason might finally reach her. But then, like clockwork, she went for her phone again, frantically snapping pictures of the cabin, of me, of the officers. "I'm gathering evidence," she declared. "The HOA will hear about this, and when they do, you'll be sorry." The older officer shook his head. "Ma'am, the HOA has no authority over private property rights. This isn't a neighborhood playground. It's his legal residence." The truth hit her like a slap. She froze, blinking rapidly, searching for one last argument but came up empty. Her face turned redder than a fire truck. Finally, with a shriek of frustration, she yanked her roller bag upright, almost toppling it in the process, and stomped down the porch steps. "You're all going to regret this," she screeched, her voice echoing off the trees as she stormed down the gravel path. "This cabin would have been better in my hands." The younger officer turned to me, finally letting the laugh out he'd been holding back. "Sir, I think you'll be fine. She won't be coming back." I shook my head, still half in disbelief. Unbelievable. Who does that? Who just demands someone else's cabin like it's a hotel? The older cop gave a small chuckle. "Around here, we call that a Karen special." As their cruisers pulled away, peace finally settled back over my cabin. The birds sang again, the wind rustled the pines, and I sat on my porch with a fresh cup of coffee, shaking my head at the absurdity of it all. One thing was certain. This was a weekend I'd never forget, and one Karen would never live down. Wild, right? If you enjoyed this crazy Karen showdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I've got plenty more unbelievable real-life stories coming your way. And hey, drop a comment below. What would you have done if Karen tried to claim your cabin?